Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome to your midweek check-in for our college football stop. Obviously, today is Wednesday, September 13th. So I wanted to get into a couple things today. Ryan Day and Jim Knowles met with the media yesterday, had some interesting things to say. And then I kind of did a little diving into some statistics that I wanted to talk to you guys about. We'll go from there. So first, I'm going to start with what Ryan Day had to say in his press conference. So the first thing, obviously, Ryan Day named a starting quarterback. That's the thing everybody was waiting for. We're all happy that it's done. No more bouncing back and forth. So Kyle McCord is going to be Ohio State's quarterback going forward, which I think it was a good time for Ryan Day to make the decision. I don't agree how the whole thing played out, but I obviously don't know as much as Ryan Day. But I think the way he handled this was wrong. I think it was just downright wrong. And I'm not saying it's wrong to any specific player. I think it was wrong to both of them, honestly, because I think that the way that he played the way that he played them in games, he clearly made it to where Kyle McCord had an advantage. He got to play back-to-back series. At one point in the Youngstown State game, Kyle McCord played 6 series before Devin Brown even played 2. Obviously, it seems like Ryan Day knew who he wanted to be the starter from the jump, and he made it that way. The issue that I have with that, though, is if this was never like a real quarterback battle to begin with, then it should not have been treated that way, because now all you've done is taken reps away from Kyle McCord, who, in my opinion, I think he severely needs those reps before we get to Notre Dame, because, I don't think that he's played phenomenal. Obviously, he had a good stat line last game, but he also only scored on half of the drives that he was on the field, and it was Youngstown State. It was a team that we should have scored 70 on, and only scored 35. But Ryan Day did say he was asked about Kyle McCord's special trait, because he said a while back that you have to have a special trait to be the quarterback. And he kind of stumbled and fumbled, and then he came to the conclusion that Kyle McCord's special trait was his overall consistency and his ability to manage the game. I don't like that from him. He did also mention Kyle McCord's accuracy, but followed that directly up with, well, he has missed some throws, but he has the potential to be a really accurate passer. So I didn't really like that from Ryan. However, I don't know what he's thinking, what his philosophy is. Maybe he's wanting to shift this team to more of a defensive minded team. That's risky, because last year the defense really failed versus the best teams. But to be fair, and I've always been on this side of things, the offense had a big part to do with the defense failing, and I think that's because they were passing the ball a lot. When they were getting stopped for like a 3 and out, the defense will be right back on the field constantly. This happened against Michigan. It happened against Georgia, where we're not running the ball. We have no run game established. We're not doing any of the short, quick games. So when you get stopped, you get stopped quickly, and your defense then has to defend a lot more possessions, which is something that is a hot topic for Ryan Day with the new clock rule, which I hate that too. It just sounds like a lot of complaining. But again, if your defense has to defend with a lot more possessions, they're probably going to give up a lot more points. I don't know. We'll see how this works out with Kyle McCord. I haven't been sold on him. I've been vocal about that. However, he can easily prove me wrong. He can be more confident. He can take command of this offense. I think the offense was kind of learning 2 different playbooks for Kyle McCord and for Devin Brown, which shouldn't be the case anymore if Kyle McCord is going to be the starter going forward. So we'll see how it plays out. If this is what our offense is going to be, I need them to go out here and bomb on Western Kentucky this weekend and put up at least 45 points. I feel like that's not even a high number for a team like this, but we'll see how it works out. The one thing that Ryan Day said that kind of pissed me off when he was talking about Devin Brown is he said, hopefully next time he's out there, he'll be more poised and have a better feel for the game. And the reason why this pissed me off is because, of course, a quarterback's not going to have poise and have a good feel for the game when he went in, I think, the 4th series of the game, then missed the 5th, 6th, and 7th, so Kyle McCord could play, and then he played the last 2 series. And, you didn't give that kid a chance to even get in a rhythm at all, And he still put up 14 points in the 3 drives that you gave him. Really, it was 21. Ryan Day said later in his conference that the Big Ten came out and said that the holding on Chip Trayanum that was called should not have been called. It resulted in a touchdown, which was the drive where Kyle McCord the drive where Devin Brown did not end up scoring because it ended up being a turnover on downs down in the red zone. So again, I don't know. I don't like the things that he has to say, but again, Ryan Day is the head coach, and in the past, I've always trusted what he had to say. He's just being a little shaky this year, and I don't know why. I don't know what the situation is, but I'm hoping that it works out and this team gets on the right track. Because obviously, we got Notre Dame coming up in 2 weeks. This weekend, we need to bomb on Western Kentucky. We need to see the defense step up and get ready for Notre Dame. Because right now, if you ask me today, I'm predicting a loss versus Notre Dame. All right, let's get back to what Ryan Day had to say. He spoke about Josh Simmons. He said that the talent's there. He just needs to put it all together, and I agree with that. I've been saying that the whole entire time. I think Josh Simmons can be one of the top tackles in the country as long as he continues to get better. He's only in his first year of playing left tackle, so 2 games is not a big enough sample size to write a guy off, especially in that position. Let's see what else Ryan Day had to say here. He keeps talking about how the teams that they played against, Indiana and Youngstown State, how they tried to slow the game down, which I agree that they did some. But I mean, again, it doesn't excuse third down conversion rate and the ability to score when you're on the field. He said we try to play fast, they try to play slow, and they don't expect that from Western Kentucky this weekend. So I don't expect to hear that excuse anymore. Another thing that Ryan Day talked about that was super interesting, he was asked about, is there an issue with vocal leadership on this team? Because we have a lot of guys who are quiet, who are not your big-time energy guys. He mentioned a few guys that he feels are those types of players on the field. He said, these guys are quiet off the field, but when they're on the field, they're the ones bringing the energy. He mentioned Tommy Eichenberg, Mike Hall, and Travion Henderson. I've seen that from Mike Hall. I've seen it from Travion Henderson when he makes a play. I don't really know if that qualifies. I haven't really seen him hyping people up when it wasn't him that made a play. But he may. We don't see everything on TV. And then Tommy Eichenberg. I do think Tommy Eichenberg is a vocal leader on the field. But I think he's also kind of down to business, and it's not rah-rah hype, more so like getting everybody in line, making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. All right, so that was it for Ryan Day's press conference. He talked about some interesting things, but I do want to hop over to what Jim Knowles had to say. He had to say some interesting things too, which some of it was good and some of it was bad in my opinion. The first thing I want to talk about that I felt like was a really bad or a terrible thing that Jim Knowles said and actually did. Malik Hartford, he said he felt like Malik Hartford struggled on the first drive, which is the only drive that Malik Hartford played in the game. He got out there. Apparently, he made some mistakes, and Jim Knowles pulled him from the game and didn't put him back in. And I just think that that's a mistake. You have someone who's a true freshman, his second game ever playing at the college level, and he got pulled after one drive. And really, Ohio State did a good job stopping them on that drive until Cam Martinez came in the game on third down and got smoked for like a 30-yard pass or whatever it was, which really got them into good field position, and they ultimately scored from there. I think where Malik Hartford messed up the most was in the goal line. You could see on the play that they actually scored on that Sonny Styles and I think Tommy Eichenberg were trying to get Malik Hartford lined up properly, and then they faked the handoff and the quarterback ran to the outside. Ohio State lost contain. I don't even think that it was Malik Hartford's fault that they lost contain. Maybe because he was not in the right spot. The people who were supposed to hold contain didn't. I don't know, but it looked like it was either on Lathan or Sonny. I don't know, but either way, pulling Malik Hartford from the game in that situation, I don't think was great. When you have young guys who are super talented enough to where you think that they should be in the game in the first place, they need to get reps, make mistakes against Youngstown State, so that way when it's Penn State time and they have to be in the game, they're going to know what to do. They've then went out there and corrected it. So I don't like that from Knowles, and I hope that he changes that approach unless it's guys that make multiple mistakes, which there seems to be some guys that can make multiple mistakes and it's completely fine. Like I think Lathan Ransom made multiple mistakes in this game and he didn't get taken off the field. So I don't know what his philosophy is on that, but I don't think that it's going to be best for development for these guys. All right, so one of the first questions he was asked, though, was about the defensive ends. He said he feels like they're doing their job, and I agree with him. So many people are on this hate train, hype train, whatever, about, oh, the defensive ends are not doing their job. They're not good enough. You got two of the top 5 players in the country with Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, and they're not getting sacks. I think that what they're asking them to do is not necessarily get after the quarterback and get sacks. Like I seen one play, watching it back, where Jack Sawyer took on 2 blockers and Sonny Styles and Tommy Eichenberg came screaming off the edge, and that play resulted in a sack. Now, you can be mad at Jack Sawyer if you want for that, but he caused that sack. Ultimately, Youngstown State made a mistake, so really Sonny Styles should have been a free hitter on the quarterback, and it ended up being him and Tommy Eichenberg who was credited with the sack. But Jack Sawyer made that play happen. He took on the tackle and the guard. 2 guys on 1 guy is going to create openings for other players. So, I don't know. I've seen multiple plays like that where the defensive ends are just doing other things other than just simply get around the edge and get to the quarterback. So, we may not see the production out of them like we want this year. That doesn't mean that they're not good players. And I think that they've been doing a phenomenal job in the run game with stopping the run. So that's, I'm not going to ask more of them. Maybe this weekend when we're playing a team that's going to drop back and pass the ball, maybe we'll see more of the defensive ends kind of traditionally just getting after the quarterback so the linebackers can be in coverage. But we'll see. If they do, I do expect a lot from them. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't expect them to get after the quarterback when that's what they're asked to do. So hopefully we'll see that this weekend. Jim Knowles had high praise for Jordan Hancock in the slot corner position. I think the same thing. He looks like he's really good in coverage. He's perfectly fine with coming up and hitting someone. I want to see more of Jordan Hancock in that position. The only thing that worries me about that is if that means Sonny Styles has to come off the field. I don't like that because I think Sonny Styles is probably the best player on this defense. So getting into something that Jim Knowles had to say that I really like. This was probably my favorite thing that he said. He said that he had to get away from that feast or famine mentality that he had last year and that he had at Oklahoma State. So what he was referring to is we're going to get after the quarterback, 0 blitz, single high coverage, things like that, and we're going to send the house. And if they catch the ball, if we don't make the tackle, then that's going to go for a big play. We heard Jim Knowles a lot last year saying, we're going to give up big plays, but we have to limit it to a certain amount. I haven't heard him say that not one time this year. He's like, we gave up 1 big play. That's not enough, or that's not good enough. I love that mentality from him because I think that when you come to a place like Ohio State, where at best you're going to play against a team that's, at best you're going to play against a team that is equally talented as you. You're not going to go into games where teams are more talented than you. So you don't need to draw this play up to make it happen, because if you have an equally talented team and your guys are making 50-50 plays, that can win you the game. So I love that he changed that mentality, and I think that that's really going to help in the big games this year, against Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan, and obviously the postseason. Let's see what else Knowles had to say here. He talked about the third down production, which obviously that's a problem. He said, even though they're not scoring points, I talked to my guys about, hey, you're getting an A by not letting them score, but we need an A+. We need to get the offense the ball back. That's, he's like, that's just as important. So I love that mentality from him too. Like, Jim Knowles has always hated the bend but don't break mentality, so he doesn't want that. He wants them to go up there and we're going to stop them for 0 yards every single time they snap the ball. And honestly, I think that's phenomenal. I love that. So he had a lot of good things to say. He had some praise for some guys. Davis Igbinosun, his tackling ability, said he doesn't want to change anything about what Iggy's doing. And then Denzel Burke, he said he has a look in his eyes, which, he's been playing phenomenal. So I hope that continues with Denzel Burke, and, he could potentially be a first-round pick come later in the year. Actually, next year, when the draft happens. All right, so moving on from the press conferences, I did want to dig into a little bit of stats here. So the first stat that I wanted to discuss was the quarterbacks and their first 2 games since Ryan Day has been at Ohio State. So we've had 4 new quarterbacks starting for the first time their first 2 games. Obviously, Kyle McCord's numbers are going to be a little bit skewed because he didn't play the full game every single time. He pretty much did versus Indiana, and then Youngstown State, he missed out on 3 drives. So a little bit skewed, but Also, these other games, these quarterbacks blew the teams out in most of them and then didn't have to play the rest of the game, except for CJ Stroud, which we'll get to that. And his numbers were astronomical. So, looking at Dwayne Haskins in 2018, Ohio State played against Oregon State and Rutgers the first two games. In those two games, Haskins threw for 546 yards and 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. The biggest thing that stands out to me there is the 9 touchdowns. I mean, obviously Haskins had a huge year that year with overall touchdowns, and I mean he started off early. He was really slinging the ball around, so I love that from him. Obviously, Ohio State won both of those games. And then moving on to Justin Fields in 2019, his first two starts were Florida Atlantic and then Cincinnati, who Cincinnati actually finished as a ranked team that year. So Fields threw for a total of 458 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Obviously, with Justin Fields, his threat was not just passing the ball like Dwayne Haskins, C.J. Stroud, and Kyle McCord. Justin Fields was also running the ball. I know in the Florida Atlantic game, the very first game that he played, the first touchdown that we scored was a long run by Justin Fields. So obviously that 6 touchdowns was at least 7. I don't know how many more he had, but I thought that was interesting, because you'll see that Kyle McCord is actually thrown for more yards than Justin Fields did in his first 2 games. But again, that aspect that he brings was something completely different, and it helped the running game out a lot at that time because at 2019 we had J.K. Dobbins who ran for 2,000 yards, which is something you don't see very often. So now let's get into C.J. Stroud. Like I said, his numbers were like astronomical. C.J. Stroud's first 2 games were Minnesota and Oregon. Minnesota was a close game. Oregon's the only one on this list that is a loss. Obviously, the defense had something to do with that because they couldn't contain the edge at all and just let Oregon do whatever they wanted. But C.J. Stroud threw for 778 yards in 2 games, 7 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. I mean, when you're looking at this list of 3 guys who went first round, and then Kyle McCord, a 5-star all-everything quarterback, C.J. Stroud's yards is way higher than theirs, which, he was throwing the ball a lot at that time, so that's fine. And C.J. Stroud was a special talent that I think that we don't appreciate much, or as much as we should as Ohio State fans, because I think C.J. Stroud is generational in terms of his arm talent and ability to place the ball where it needs to be. Now let's get into Kyle McCord's numbers. He has 497 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So obviously the thing that sticks out to me the most is that he has a lot less touchdowns than both of them. Or sorry, not both of them, but all of the other quarterbacks, which he threw 0 against Indiana. So obviously that was a problem. And, Indiana, I don't think they're going to end up being a good team. I think they'll be lucky to go 500 this year. Same with Youngstown State. So obviously those numbers are concerning. Now, I don't really understand some of the philosophy that we've been running, especially the first game. We did a lot of 2 and 3 tight ends on the field. Again, I don't really know what Ryan Day was going for there, but it didn't ultimately help the run game that much, and the passing game kind of took a hit. Also, Kyle didn't look great in the Indiana game. Didn't look phenomenal in the Youngstown State game, but he was okay. He hit the plays that were there. So I think that all offseason we were talking about a potential drop-off at quarterback, and everybody said, no, Ryan Day is not going to let that happen. Ryan Day is a quarterback guru. I still think that he is, but I think that a lot of things are different on this Ohio State team now, and I think that is having an effect on Ryan Day. One thing that I just heard mentioned for the first time yesterday in a Twitter space was Kevin Wilson not being at Ohio State anymore. Since Ryan Day has been at Ohio State, Kevin Wilson's been with him. So I do think that has a big impact on what Ryan Day is doing. And Kevin Wilson was like his eyes in the sky. So when you have your offensive coordinator on the field, which we do right now with Brian Hartline, you got to have somebody up in the box who can relay what they're seeing down to the field, and then you can make adjustments off of that. And I think that they have Keenan Bailey doing that now, who just became the Ohio State's tight end coach this year. So, maybe there's some issues with communication and things like that, and that's just going to take all of them to gel, just like how, any unit, like an offensive line, they have to gel. I think a coaching staff has to gel also, and sometimes they just don't, and that's my worry with this team, is that the coaching staff, specifically the offensive coaching staff, doesn't gel, and the offense ends up losing us a game or two by not even scoring 20 points. So we'll see how it plays out. But I did want to just get into some of those stats and let you guys know how each quarterback did in their first 2 games as a starter at Ohio State. And then I'm going to stick with some stats here, but I just want to look at some interesting things that I found about the 2023 team so far. I'm a big guy on digging into stats and seeing just if there's anything interesting, if there's anything that you wouldn't expect, you wouldn't think would be the case. So looking at the first offense here, Ohio State's only averaging 29 points per game this year. That's not great. Their opponents have not been great. And a big part of that is their third down percentage. The third down percentage is 7 of 24, 29.17%. That is awful. That is really awful. Now, they have went for it a lot on 4th down after missing on a 3rd down and got the first down, in that situation. But that's not something that you're going to do when it comes to playing against a talent-equated team. You're not going to just run the ball up the middle, not get the first down, and then just go for it on 4th down from your own 50 or from the 50 every single time and end up with a first down. That's just simply, it's not going to happen. So they have to fix the 3rd down conversions. I don't know how they're going to fix it because personally that's one of the reasons why I touted and talked so highly of Devin Brown is because when he was on the field, the 3rd down percentage was higher. And that's because it just simply allowed the run game to be more multiple. When Kyle McCord's out there, this is what they've been doing. I'm not saying that they're going to continue doing this, but they've been just lining him up under center, handing the ball up the middle, or they tried that weak-ass pitch play that they always like to do, which never seems to work with this team. I don't even know why we do it. But they're lining him up under center, and they're trying to run the ball and get the first down, and it's not working, and there's no misdirection. Everybody knows what's coming. The defense just lines up, and ultimately they end up having a free hitter, and we just don't get the first down. That's, again, when Devin Brown was in there, he's able to create misdirection. He can read a defender, so you're automatically getting an extra number. Excuse me. You're automatically getting an extra number right there by reading one defender, so he's pretty much taken out of the play. I don't know. Again, I don't think negatively of Kyle McCord. I think that he has a chance to be a really good quarterback. But some of these stats, I think, are a result of Kyle McCord being the quarterback. But it's also up to Ryan Day to adjust to this. Like, if you don't have that quarterback in there that's going to allow you to run the ball on 3rd down, then throw the damn ball. Just whatever. Run a slant. Run, whatever. Just do something to get a quick pass off and get the first down because that percentage is going to lose games. If that percentage is 29.17 against Indiana and Youngstown State, I mean, that might be 15% against Notre Dame. You're talking about 1 first down out of, 10 or 9, 1 first down out of like 9 attempts. You're going to lose that game. You're not even going to score 20 points. So, I don't know. We'll see how it works out, but that's something that was interesting that needs to be addressed. Another thing, I just looked at like the amount of passes to runs. So I thought Ryan Day's done a good job this year of being pretty balanced. However, the team has been more pass heavy, and I want to take that back to what I said before, how we ran a lot of 12 personnel and even 13 personnel with and we're still passing the ball more than we're running the ball. So it doesn't really make sense to me. You would think that if we're going to be passing the ball more than we're running the ball, we would have more wide receivers on the field. I know G. Scott and Cade Stover are decent in the pass game, but they're not going to be better than having Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, or Carnell Tate and Marv out there. We've passed the ball just 54% of the time, so it's not like a major difference. 69 passes to 58 rushes. All right, so I want to move on from the offensive side of the ball. Just move over to the defense, and then we'll wrap this up here. So the only stat that I thought was super interesting about the defense, actually 2, but the first one is looking at the tackles. So when I was looking down the list of the leading tacklers on this team, I thought it was interesting that every single one of them pretty much came from different position groups, which I think is interesting because that means that people are flying to the ball. And I think that alone is going to help with giving up big plays, having multiple guys getting to the ball and getting them down. So just to put some numbers behind what I said, Steele has 11 tackles. Tommy has 10. Tyleik Williams has 10. That one was one that I thought was super interesting. He's been a beast all year on the inside, and I think that he showed that ever since he's been at Ohio State. But you know, he just hasn't been on the field enough, and a lot of people speculated, saying that he was not in shape and all this stuff. Again, it comes down to the thing that I always talk about. It's okay to slander some players, but you can't just simply point out another player doing bad or you're picking a side, whatever. But Tyreek Williams has been dominant. He's in shape. He's doing what he's supposed to do. Moving on from that, though, we have Davis Nigbinosin at 9 tackles and then Sonny Styles at 8. So you have 2 linebackers, obviously, especially when you played against 2 teams that ran the ball a lot. You have an interior defensive lineman, a corner, and then a safety slash nickel slash linebacker who is obviously going to be in on a lot of tackles. So I thought that was interesting. And then the last thing that I have here, the sacks so far this year. Ohio State has 3 sacks so far, and 2 of them have came from interior defensive linemen with Hero Kanu, and then Mike Hall. Really, there was 3. There was one in the Indiana game that they didn't count as a sack for Ty Hamilton. That was definitely a sack. I don't know why they didn't count it, but I think they said the quarterback did a design run, but he didn't. He dropped back and then tried to scramble and got tackled behind the line. So that should be a sack. Really, they have 4, but the 3 that have counted on the stat sheet, Hero Kanu completely blew up a interior offensive lineman, grabbed the quarterback. Mike Hall, he's a freak, and I think that he could end up having a huge year, being one of the best defensive tackles in the country. And then Tommy Eichenberg got a sack, which we talked about that one earlier in the show, where him and C.J. Hicks were kind of screaming off the edge, and they were running in sync. It was kind of funny if you go back and watch the play. They're almost tripping over each other because Sonny Styles was so close to Tommy Eichenberg. All right, so that's going to be it for today's show. I do want to, starting tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and get into the Western Kentucky game, what I expect to see. So leave a like, leave a comment, obviously hit the subscribe button, and come back for more content. Peace out.